Hello and welcome to the Unnamed Sports Show here on the Sports Talk Line Network, where we talk sports 24/7, 365. I'm your host, Joshua Griffith, and on today's episode, I chat with Chris Faber and David Quadrelli from Canucks Army and Canucks Conversation Podcast. So before we get started, make sure you like the video down at the bottom, subscribe to the Sports Talk Line channel, and if you are a really big fan, hit that blue join button and you'll get lots of extra perks. So we're going to talk some hockey with the NHL schedule being released on Wednesday. We're going to talk some World Juniors. We're going to talk some Canucks prospects, and we're going to talk some other stuff. So hope you guys enjoy the interview with David Quadrelli and Chris Faber from Canucks Conversation Podcast. So I am joined now on the Unnamed Sports Show by David Quadrelli and Chris Faber of Canucks Army and Canucks Conversation Podcast, and of course, newly appointed at Sportsnet. Chris, congratulations on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's been a good start so far. And, I'm kind of used to waking up at 4 a.m. anyway, so the morning shift hasn't been too bad on me. But yeah, it's fun. It's got 30 seconds of airtime today, so it's getting better every week.
Fantastic. So thanks for joining me during the holiday season, guys. Are you both, you and your family staying safe and healthy during these times?
Yeah, absolutely. Chris and I used to record at my grandpa's house, but we can't do that now. We're just, we're staying away from everybody, trying to stay as safe as we can, but hopefully we'll be back in the BCIT studio soon.
I saw that you guys were getting a really nice studio set up and started to get all the wall stuff and the soundproofing, and so it was looking good. But of course, these are the times we're in, right?
Yeah.
So the Canucks Army and Canucks Conversation Podcast is basically the go-to for Canucks fans when it comes to news, prospect information. Even Canucks dog articles. David, could you talk a bit about your transition to managing editor for the Canucks Army and just the direction you've kind of taken the brand?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started, it was a bit of a transitional phase for sure. Like, as you know, a lot of the guys that wrote at Canucks Army either now write for The Athletic or they work for the Canucks. So we kind of lost our team a little bit. We had to kind of go through a rebuild, I like to say. But yeah, it's been good ever since I took over. I've just been trying to build the team to kind of what I envisioned, and kind of what I thought of is like, there was people before, and I don't see it much anymore, which I think is good because it's kind of what I was going for. But I definitely saw people say like, oh, Canucks Army is so negative. And like, I thought that was stupid, but I was also like, well, let's give these people a voice. So I started looking a little wider and like kind of broadening my searches. So even if there's a writer whose stuff I don't agree with, I was still like, okay, well, somebody agrees with it, so they deserve a voice on the platform. So that's kind of what I've tried to do, is I've tried to just make it as inclusive as possible and as broad as possible. So like every Canucks fan has a writer on the site that they can kind of relate to, or they're like, okay, this guy knows how I feel, or this girl knows how I feel. Like, for example, Clarissa, I've been really happy ever since I added her to the team, because she's been focusing a lot on like entertainment articles, and she's been fantastic. I really, really like her, and I'm really excited because, her in particular, she's going to be taking like a next step into doing like post games and like, focusing more on the actual game that's being played. But man, during the off season, like she killed it, for example. So yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty happy with the team right now, and I've got this guy over here on as a senior writer, which is massive. Like our prospects coverage is, great. I think it's probably the best that you can find for any Canucks blog. And I think, it's all thanks to Chris for that.
Yeah, I've really been enjoying a lot of Clarissa's work, so she should keep that up. So Chris, what have you enjoyed about writing for the Canucks Army?
Yeah, quite a bit. Obviously, if you're a fan of the Vancouver Canucks and you're online, you probably know about Canucks Army. That was a site that I wanted to get to when I first started off. I started off at the same spot that Dave did. Both of us got started with the Canuck Way, and then just moving up to Canucks Army was something that kind of was a goal for me as a blogger. And Ryan Beach, who now works for the Vancouver Canucks, was the guy who gave me the opportunity. He listened to the podcast, and Canucks Army kind of wanted to add the podcast to the show. And it's funny because now it's come kind of full circle. Now the Canucks Army has actually teamed up with Canucks Conversation. That was kind of the thing that got my foot in the door to Canucks Army. And now, being featured on the website, you can even just see it on every single article. Now it's on the right side of the page for the Spotify link. So that's pretty cool to have. And working for an organization like Canucks Army that's had so many great people come through. I believe it's 8 people or 9 people now that have worked for Canucks Army and moved on to NHL teams and NHL jobs. It's pretty incredible. So yeah, it's a prestigious site, and it's pretty awesome to be a senior writer there for sure.
Well, people are definitely enjoying all the Canucks coverage that you guys are providing, and just that you're able to make it so multifaceted, just, provides people who like to read the articles, who, like David said, they like the, more of the entertainment stuff or the fun stuff. And then, you guys have the great podcast now that you've added to it. So, I mean, Chris, you kind of were first in starting the podcast, if I believe. What, kind of made you wanted to make it a go-to for listeners, and such a focus on prospects now too in recent.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, me and David talked about this recently. I think we just did episode 122. So now we've officially done more episodes with Dave as a co-host than I did by myself. So that's kind of cool that we're kind of moving into the second stage of the show. But yeah, it always started with prospects. It was something that I wanted to just be able to talk to prospects, and I think my interview skills have kind of grown throughout the years of doing this, because I started and you would just ask them the same questions all the time. And Josh, I'm sure you've learned this doing interviews as well. Like, your first time doing interviews, it's always like, oh, what's your favorite food? Did you play any sports growing up? But I think the more and more you do them, you feel more comfortable actually asking some questions that can bring some more fun instead of doing the exact same ones. And I've tried to do a little bit of that with bringing on guests. I know one of the favorite conversations we ever had on the show was Quads and Brogan Rafferty, talking about The Bachelor nonstop. And I just had to take a step away from that conversation. But that's the content that, I think some people might enjoy, even if you're not a Bachelor fan. Like, to hear a hockey player talk about his hot takes on Bachelor girls, it was hilarious to hear. And I just think that giving that side of the prospects kind of connects Canucks fans to them a little bit more. It doesn't have to be Bachelor talk every time, but we've definitely gone down that avenue with multiple players so far. So yeah, I think people are interested. Vancouver's a great market for hockey. Huge fan base for the Vancouver Canucks, and I think everybody cares a lot about the prospects. I've heard it from talking to prospects where they're like, wow, like Aiden McDonough is a good example. He couldn't believe how many people are paying attention to him. He was picked in the last round of the draft, and all these people are following his season now at Northeastern, and he's going into his sophomore year after a great first year. And it kind of blew him away what Canucks Twitter and the fan base was really like. And so, yeah, I try and give that a spot on the podcast to engage with these prospects and hear more about them.
David, I really love that interview about The Bachelor, by the way. It was good. It was a really good conversation. And I think that's something that you two both do really well with the Canucks prospects, is you've developed that level, like that relationship with them. And the conversation is not just like an interview, not just like you're saying, Chris, asking the same questions. I mean, one of the things that I always try to notice, every single one of my questions started with let's, or so, like I had one or two things and that was it. I was like, oh, I should probably start changing that. But I think that's really important. What has been some of your favorite guests on the show so far, David? I'll ask you first.
I have fun every time I talk to Kevin Woodley. Everybody knows I really like to talk about goaltenders. Yeah. So Kevin Woodley's like my favorite recurring guest. Every time I get to talk to him, is just, I have so much fun. But probably my favorite guest ever that we've had on the show is Tony Gallagher. I think that was probably the episode where, it was one of those times, this is when COVID numbers were pretty low. I drove to Chris's house, and it was an early morning, really early for me. It was like 10 a.m. And I drove to Chris's house, and, we just sat down. We're like, okay, let's get this done. And I think that was kind of the interview where I really kind of started to get comfortable interviewing. Like, when you listen to earlier episodes of Canucks Convo, and Chris can even attest to this, like, I would have questions written down. I was even like this on the Canucks Zoom calls when I was asking players questions. Like, I'd have almost like a rehearsed question. I've completely moved away from that. You just have to. You can't be asking questions like that. So I finally got away from that. But that was kind of the interview that we did, where I was like, okay, I can just talk to this guy, and I can just, ask them questions and genuinely be curious to find out, what insight he has to offer. And, Tony Gallagher has so much to offer. So yeah, I think that was probably my favorite interview. Sammy Salo was another one that we just had so much fun with. And I think those were on back-to-back weeks. So yeah, I think those were my favorite for sure. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Kevin Woodley interviews as well, because Quads normally does those, and I don't have to talk goalies with Quads. That's all he ever wants to do on the show. So it's nice when Woodley hops on with Dave, and I don't have to be there for that. So that's definitely one of my favorites. But episode 5 with Jason Botchford, I think it's the best episode of the show. Even to this day, we've done over 100 since that episode. And that was the most fun. We did that, like, honestly, I think it's 2 years to today. I think it was the 23rd or potentially the 24th when I recorded that interview with Jason. I remember being so nervous and like holding my phone because I'd recorded through my phone and my mic, and I was like holding them like this the whole time and just like talking into the mic at the same time and just trying to get the best audio quality. And if it was too loud, I'd like pull it away and push it forward. And that was a pretty incredible interview. And obviously, ever since Jason's passing, it's been a tough thing as well. But I think looking back on that episode, it's great to have the memories. But aside from that, I love getting in studio with Harmon Dial, like Quads kind of mentioned, when we were able to do some of those episodes when quarantine wasn't as harsh for a little bit there before the numbers really spiked. I'd pick up Harm on the way. We'd chat the whole time, not really talk about hockey until you get in the studio. And then as soon as that recording light goes on, it's straight hockey talk, and having Quads and Harm and myself in there, I really think some magic comes out of those conversations. So anything in person's great. Like, those interviews where you can actually see and recognize how people are talking, how they are making their points. Like, those are a lot of fun. So anything in person's great. And piggybacking off what Quad said, talking to a legend like Tony Gallagher, that was an awesome one too. And I think both of us, when we finished that Tony Gallagher interview, like Quad said, he came over here. And as soon as we hung up the phone with Tony, we both just like looked at each other. We're like we just knocked that out of the park. Like, we were both so happy with how the interview came down. We got like an epic quote, an epic rant from Tony about Louis Eriksson. So yeah, I mean, there's so many to look back at, man. It's hard to really think about. Like, we've had, I think, close to about 150 different guests on the show. Wow. 122 episodes. So yeah, it's just incredible to look at all of them. All of them have a special, place in my heart, I guess you could say.
That's great. So, you mentioned Botch, and you mentioned just kind of talking when doing interviews one-on-one with players. You both were recipients of the Botchford Project. I was wondering if you could, kind of talk a bit about that. What was one of the things that kind of maybe most surprised you about like the whole media experience being up in the booth? David, we'll go with you first.
Yeah, geez, surprised. I don't know if surprised is the right word, because I guess I was surprised about how high up you were. I didn't realize that the view was like, you complain about nosebleed seats. The media is like really high up. It's not the best view. It's really like a bird's eye view. But I think that was probably the thing that surprised me the most. But the thing that I wasn't expecting from the night that happened was, I've talked about this a few times, was Cat Botchford's advice to me. It was just, I knew I was getting mentored by Drance. I knew I was getting mentored by Jeff Patterson. PJ was there too, Ryan Beach. Those guys were all there helping me out, giving me advice. It was a great day. But then at night, I kind of got to talk to Cat Botchford right after the dinner we all had. And yeah, she gave me some of the best advice, and it was just to you got to be yourself and don't try to be anybody else. And I think I really leaned into that right after that night. I took that advice to heart, and I kind of did it right away. And here we are.
Something for me that I was kind of shocked by, and I was told a little bit of stuff, but my company kind of they're like, no, you just got to go have fun. You got to experience it. I was kind of floored by the spread that us media got. And the players in the booth, because for the Whitecaps, they are in a booth just right next door. They were not allowed any of the food, which was hilarious. So they would try and come in, they try and get popcorn, and they'd be like, no, it's for the media only. David or Chris, what about you?
Yeah, the food was pretty good. We had a lot of we had to get second period snacks when ours was put out. But for my day, like, I wrote about Jason Botchford for my article about, copying his article about how Elias Pettersson changed, the city of Vancouver. And I did the same, but with how Jason Botchford changed it. And to come full circle, I got to talk to Elias Pettersson for about probably 6 or 7 minutes, I'd say, just one-on-one down in the corridor there. And that was pretty cool. Like, he didn't practice that day. He didn't do any media, but I just kind of said like, hey, I wanted to just ask him quickly about why he mentioned Botch when he received his Calder Trophy and stuff like that. And as soon as he heard that I was writing about Jason Botch for that, he came out. So I was the only media member that he talked to that day. And I really think it helped tie the article together just to get a quote from him about that. So Yeah, that part was kind of cool. And Tyler Myers is definitely 6'7". That was kind of another shocker too in the locker room. Like he's a really tall dude. Like I'm a pretty big guy. Like I'm bigger than a lot of people. And Tyler Myers made me feel pretty small. So that's the other part, I guess, that shocked me.
Holy sick. Yeah, he's almost a foot taller than me. Wow. So I'm joined by David Quadrelli and Chris Faber here on the Unnamed Sports Show. So the World Juniors is starting tomorrow, on Christmas Day, and we have a game actually coming up here shortly with Canada and Russia. A couple prospects for the Canucks this year: Vasily Podkolzin and Arvid Kosmar for Sweden. Who do you think is going to excite more coming out of this tournament, and why? Chris, well, you're the prospects guy, so don't worry. Yeah, I have goalie questions.
Yeah, I think that if you go into this tournament and look at expectations of both these players, I actually think Arvid Kosmar is going to shock people more. I think Kosmar is going to play in a great spot with that Swedish team, potentially between Holtz and Raymond, who were top picks in this previous draft that just happened. And I don't think that there's a lot of expectations really for Kosmar because not a lot of people have been talking about him. He's a 7th-round pick of the Vancouver Canucks in 2019, but what he's going to do for Sweden is play on all parts of the ice. He's going to potentially be on the power play. That might be the one spot where they might not have him, but he's going to kill penalties. He's going to be one of the top 2 centers on that team. And I do think that he will get power play time with that group. So if that actually happens and he's playing in all 3 facets of the ice and playing at 5-on-5 special teams and all that, like I think he's going to get a lot of ice time and a lot of run. And people are going to like how chippy and annoying he is to opponents. Like he's already like pissing off a lot of guys in the SHL when he's playing right now. He's got incredible numbers when he does play against junior 20 players. So I'm excited to see what he's able to do here. But obviously Vasily Podkolzin is, he's the meal ticket for the Vancouver Canucks fans at this tournament. You got to see what this kid's about to do. Really has the potential to be one of, if not the best forward in this tournament. And by saying that, you could say the same thing about player overall. He's going to be stronger than 95% of the guys in this tournament, and I think he skates well. I think that this is the time for him to explode. But like I said, if your expectations are high on Vasily Podkolzin, there's a chance for you to be let down if he doesn't really put up a ton of points, because that's not really something that he's done in World Juniors in the past. But this is his 3rd World Junior Championship, and I think he's primed to just absolutely take it over and be serious consideration for the best player in this tournament.
David, who are you excited to watch? And it doesn't even have to be one of those 2. It could be a random goalkeeper from, say, a Russian team.
Joel Blomqvist. I'm really excited to see him. He's Finland's goaltender, and I was really high on him before the draft. I know the Canucks were really high on him before the draft. That was the guy they were going to target. He went to Pittsburgh, I think, at 56 overall, so in the 2nd round before the Canucks could get their hands on him. But he's a guy I'm really excited to watch. I don't know how great he's going to be in this tournament, but I think when all is said and done, I said it before, I think he's going to be the best goaltender from his draft class. Chris doesn't agree with it, but just solely based on fundamentals and everything everything he's shown that he's able to do, I think he's going to be great transitioning to the NHL. I don't know. Again, I think Astrov's going to be the best goaltender in this World Juniors. I know he had a rough year last year, but I think Astrov really has potential to just steal this tournament for Russia. And he's electric, right? Like you watch him play in the KHL, he's a great goaltender. I just think there's some holes in his game that are going to get exposed at the NHL level, and I think Blomqvist doesn't really have those. But again, we'll see. I know it's a bold take, but I'm really excited to get my eyes on Blomqvist because he plays in a very under-scouted Finnish league. So you kind of, when you're watching his games and when I was finding tape of him, it was tough. Like there's not a lot out there. So you had to really, really look hard for it. And Chris knows all about bad streams and how it's not great. You're not able to really see the puck or, where it's being played in the corner or anything like that. But yeah, I'm pretty excited to watch Blomqvist for sure.
You could almost use some blue and red lines on the pucks.
Yeah, there you go.
You guys had a pretty heated argument on one of your Canucks conversations, if I remember well, like maybe a month ago or so, about the 2 goaltenders. And I think David was saying, oh, well, he's he's making these beautiful saves because he's out of position. He's kicking them off and he's sending terrible rebounds. And Chris, you were getting a bit fired up. So that was a good episode. If anybody missed that one, they need to check it out.
It was a fun one. Yeah, you'll see the rebounds at the World Junior. There'll be tons of rebounds. You can see it firsthand. But that's all. That's all I'll say for now.
Do you think that's gonna hurt Russia? Or I mean, because what, Russia
No.
2 still gonna?
No. Nobody's gonna pounce on it like they would in the NHL. They're gonna be just fine, but you're gonna see the rebounds and then you say, "Oh, Quads was right." Trust me.
Chris, who's winning the World Juniors this year?
Russia is winning the World Juniors this year. I think that they have a great forward group. I think that they have the best goaltender in this tournament right now in this tournament and into their NHL career in Yaroslav Askarov. I think that some of these Russian forwards that they have, they're big, strong bodies with strong shots. They have a good defense core as well. I think that gold medal matchup between Canada and Russia is going to be incredible. But you know what? Canada's got 20 first-round picks going into this tournament. So it's almost a hot take to take Russia, I guess, at this point. But I just think that Russian team, like, they looked really good at the Quadrelli Cup. They played against pros from other leagues. They played against grown men, former NHL players and stuff. And I just think that team looked so good in that tournament, and the opportunity that they got to play those games compared to the other teams that really haven't had an opportunity to gel together like that, I think that's going to help them in the early parts of the tournament. And as we're recording this, we're 30 minutes away from getting a Canada versus Russia game, which is pretty exciting as well. So I'm excited to get to that and just see how both teams kind of match up against each other. And it's going to be interesting because Russia normally wins, it almost feels like a lot, especially in the most recent couple of years. Russia's going to, if I was a betting man, I'd say Russia wins the game today, but Canada probably beats them in the gold medal match. But I'm going to stick with Russia as my team to win this. And I think that the odds are $10 makes you back 35 right now if you pick Russia. So I might have to throw some money on it to back it up.
Might not be a bad idea, actually. David, do you think Russia too, or what do you got? Canada? Yeah, Russia.
No, Chris is bang on. I totally agree with him. And yeah, it's no question they have the best goaltender in the tournament right now for sure. I think Askarov's actually going to be a factor in them winning this. I think he's going to be a big part of their team. Again, and I'm really just excited to watch Puck Colson. But Chris has watched these guys a lot more. But like he said, showing well at the Quadrelli Cup, that's not easy to do, especially when they were playing against grown men, as Chris mentioned. I think Russia has a real shot at this, and they're my pick. They're my pick to win it.
I wouldn't be doubting a Russia win here too, and especially what you mentioned playing at the Quadrelli Cup, and also I think Puck Colson played 24 games already, and that's in the KHL. So a lot of these people are gonna have, I think, ups on the Canadian and U.S. squads. Maybe people that weren't paying, playing already at the beginning of the tournament. So. Mm-hmm. I'm excited for it too. And like I said, starts in just under 30 minutes here for that Canada-Russia game. Well, let's get into the actual Canucks hockey team. So David, you, on your conversation with Kevin Woodley, you guys mentioned that, talked about the taxi squad, and if you thought Mikey DiPietro would be better fit as a taxi squad player, just so he has all of that time with Ian Clark. I was wondering if you could kind of, elaborate on that a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was looking at kind of what the best scenario is for Mikey D, he had a really good season at the AHL level last year. He showed well as the starter. And what a lot of people don't really know is that he only did that after he spent a week or a long weekend, I think it was, with Ian Clark. Ian Clark went down to Utica, got to work with Michael DiPietro, showed him what he needed to work on. DiPietro instantly put it in his game, and he was the starter the whole way through from that point on in the season. And Chris watched a lot of AHL games, and he can tell you how good Mikey DiPietro was. I didn't really understand it until I watched it myself. You have to watch the games to understand it, but I watched a few games, and the thing you really notice with DiPietro is his positional awareness. He's a bit of a smaller guy, so he has to come out a little more, be aggressive, cut down the angle. But what's really surprising with him is his ability to get back and just the way he can find his post, and just he's never too far to the right, he's never too far to the left, and he's always able to just back up perfectly. He always knows where he is, even when he's outside of his crease. It's phenomenal. I don't think I've seen a young goaltender with as much crease awareness as him. So I think that's going to really help him in his next steps. But I think Ian Clark, from here on out, he's a few things that he wants to tweak and wants to work on. And I don't think DiPietro is going to get much more benefit from staying in the AHL and not implementing those things as he would practicing with the Canucks, facing NHL shots, albeit in practice, and being able to work with Ian Clark and Braden Holtby and Thatcher Demko every single day. Like, let's not forget, guys, like Braden Holtby's maybe here for only 1 year. He has a lot of experience and a lot of advice that he could give DiPietro that would prove invaluable to DiPietro. And, when it comes to Clark, he has things he wants to implement in his goaltenders. He started it with Mikey. He just started it with Holtby recently. But I think the longer you let DiPietro stay up with the big club, even on a taxi squad, like I think this is a rare opportunity for the Canucks to kind of take advantage of it and give DiPietro the best chance to develop into being able to be a backup next year for Demko after Holtby's potentially gone to Seattle.
That's one thing I didn't even think of. I mean, I thought of the Ian Clark aspect, but just the whole knowledge that Braden Holtby could pass along. And then also too, the transferable skills of, it will be a different NHL season, but it'll be an NHL season where you're traveling, you're skating, you're doing the exact same things the NHL team would be doing minus playing the games, but that could be important for him. So we have the season schedule that came out today, and we have January 3rd training camp starting. Chris, what are you most excited about? Are you looking forward to for the training camps? I know Hoglander's made his way back to Vancouver. We're going to have a lot of competition for that back pairing on the third D. What is it for you? What sticks out for you?
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what Nils Hoglander looks like once he finally gets over here. I mean, he's already in Vancouver. It's great to see his quarantine set up. People saw that because he was swiping earlier this week. But I think that there's a lot of battles that we're going to see, and specifically having no preseason games. Like, these are going to be won and lost in drills, in battles, how they look on the ice, and then potentially if the Vancouver Canucks want to go with a similar format of their return to play for the bubble hockey, if they were going to, play some scrimmages, which I think is a great idea because it was something that they did going into the bubble hockey and they looked great coming out of it. So I think that might be another option for them. If they get some of those and, Hoglander sticks out, a guy like Brogan Rafferty is going to be in my eyes. And really the other thing that's not really being talked about as much because there's so much Hoglander hype and talk about the third pairing is, like, do we really know that Thatcher Demko is the starter right now? Like, I don't think that that's set in stone. I think that there's a real chance that Braden Holtby could be the opening night starter for the Vancouver Canucks. I mean, just look at his record, as a goaltender in the NHL is much better than what we've seen from Thatcher Demko so far. But then again, you look at it from the other side, like after seeing what Thatcher Demko did in his final run there against the Vegas Golden Knights, it's pretty hard for me to step away from that and just hope that you can catch a little bit more of that magic at the start of the year. So lots to talk about at training camp. It's going to be a fun 10 days for sure. And yeah, it's just going to be awesome to get back in the rink again. And I know Quads has a lot of stuff planned for content if we're both able to sneak in there.
I was going to ask, will you guys be covering it? Have you heard anything yet? Or
as far as we know, I think we're going to be in the building. I think the government approved them for the same setup as they had in the summer. So, Chris and I were there. We weren't both there at the same time, but that's something we're going to have to try and pull some strings on this year and both get in there at the same time. Because I think, just with what we have planned, I don't want to hint too much, but we've got some very good stuff planned and it's going to require both of us to be there. So hopefully we're able to do that. But yeah, I think, unless something crazy happens, we should be there when it starts.
And the passes, they do not photocopy well. So people stop asking me to photocopy my Whitecast password. What do you guys make of an all-Canadian division? I don't have the Canucks at the top. I have them maybe squeaking into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think seeing the schedule come out today was actually pretty cool. Like, it's got a real baseball feel to it, and I kind of actually like that. Like, I think I didn't like the idea of it, but actually seeing it on paper was kind of cool. And I do think that, playing 3 games against a team in a row is going to create a pretty hell of a game for that Thursday or the third game of it, right? So I'm excited to see what happens with it. And looking at it, yeah, I think like a lot of people have Toronto at number 1. It's really hard to pick Toronto at number 1 for me, just because I think so much that they lack in the back end and at their goaltending as well. I mean, Dave actually had a really good tweet about this right when the schedule came out, but like, it doesn't look good for teams. I think what Dave said was it doesn't look good for teams who have like a normal starter and backup situation. I mean, that's something that the Vancouver Canucks actually have a big edge on the rest of the teams in this league. I think that their duo of goaltenders might be better than anyone's, depending on what Winnipeg can put together. Because already having Hellbuck there is a great start for them, and Calgary with Markstrom. So it's going to be interesting to see what a duo looks like, because if you're playing, 14, 15 games every month, that's a lot to take in for a starter. If you want to be a starter who's typically playing, 70, 75% of your games, I just don't think we're going to see that. I think that the Canucks have a good setup with Holtby and Demko there. And then, if DiPietro is the guy who has to slide in and play a handful of games as well, I think this is actually a good step for him if he's able to do that. So, yeah, I don't really it's hard to rank them because I really think it's so interchangeable, but I don't have the similar take that a lot of people do of saying the Leafs are number one for sure. I really think it could be, I think Calgary's improved. I think the Vancouver Canucks have the potential to improve, specifically with the schedule that came out and the young players getting better. So, yeah, I got Calgary. I got the Canucks up there. I got Toronto up there. And I think that Montreal might shock a little bit of people as well. They're going to be a faster and better scoring team this year. So, a lot in the wide open. But, I mean, if I had to pick a winner right now, I actually think I'd go with the Calgary Flames. I just think that they've improved a little bit. And if they're able to stay healthy, which is going to be dependent for a lot of these teams, but I'm going to stick with the Flames. So it might be a little bit of a hot take there, I guess. I'm not sure.
Unintended. So, you mentioned the goaltending. I would almost say that Montreal has the best goaltending tandem then with Carey Price and Jake Allen. So I'll throw the same question to you, David. Who do you think is going to come out on top, and how do you think the Canadian division is going to look?
So I think there's three big tandems to keep your eye on. Obviously, there's Jacob Markstrom and David Rittich. I think that, Chris is not far off saying that Calgary could be number one. I'd say they do have the best tandem. I'd say that's a better tandem than Carey Price and Jake Allen. I really do. Just going off what Jacob Markstrom has done in the past 2 years, he's not going to forget what Ian Clark told him. I don't think by the time the 5th or 6th year rolls around on that deal that the Flames are going to be too happy with his performance. But, at least this next year, he's going to be fantastic. I think he's going to be one of the best goaltenders in the league. And it sucks that the Canucks are going to have to face him 10 times. But, he's going to be a real factor. And, with David Rittich behind him, Jacob Markstrom's a workhorse. We know that better than anybody. He can play a lot. And when he can't, you've got Rittich, who started most of the games last year for Calgary. That's not bad at all. Calgary's going to be just fine in the goaltending position. And then, like you said, Montreal with Carey Price and Jake Allen. You're never upset about Carey Price being your goalie, and now you've got Jake Allen as well. I think they're going to be a real good tandem. But for the Canucks, I think it's a little less certain that they're going to have the best tandem. I don't think that's going to be the case for them. But I do think Demko is going to be really good. And kind of going back to what Chris said about, Demko only had that performance in the playoffs. Who knows? It was interesting because I posed that same question to Woodley, and I said I think it's going to be Holtby on opening night, or it's going to be Holtby's job to lose just because he's a veteran. And Woodley kind of said it the other way around. He was like, well, Demko's the one that's been working with Ian Clark, and he's the one that has done more of the things Ian Clark wants to see. So I don't know, it's going to be really interesting, but I think it's almost like a 50-50 going in. And I almost think it doesn't matter who starts the season because it's a back-to-back in Edmonton, right? So they're both going to play the first 2 games of the season. So who really cares who starts on opening night? You know what I mean? It's not the end of the world if they don't, because whoever doesn't start is starting the next night. So it's not really going to matter, I don't think. But I think going into it, I think Demko has the edge.
Yeah, Canucks have never had a problem with starting a goalie on a certain night and it being an issue. Luongo with the old Winter Classic there. So I'm joined by David and Chris, and before we wrap it up, because I know that they are busy and have some things to do later. Oh, what's going on here?
There we go.
Oh, there we go. My internet.
Lost for a sec.
I was like, I think they froze, or they're just looking at me really silly. I made a joke and I was like, wow, that just flopped really badly.
Yeah, we couldn't hear you.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, yeah, no, I said Canucks have never had any issues with not starting a goalie for certain games.
Yeah, that's true.
So joined now by David. See, the joke flopped anyway, so it was fine. I should have just not said it. Joined by David and Chris here from Canucks Army, Canucks Conversation. So Canucks fans are pretty lucky that you guys were able to connect. So David, I don't know if you know this, but me and Chris actually have known each other for almost 4 years now. And so we went camping for a buddy's mutual bachelor party and then kind of kept going back. And we listened to, I think it was the 2017 draft lottery from your truck, the Wi-Fi in your truck, Chris?
Yeah, 2017. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And that was, so like, going back then, I mean, was this something that you wanted to do all the way back then? Did you know already?
I think at the time I was just a big fan of the Canucks, and I think around then was just when I was starting to actually tune into podcasts and radio shows. Right? I mean, I remember that night sacrificing a Ryan Kessler jersey to the fire because I knew that the draft lottery was coming up, and I was like, if you sacrifice this Kessler jersey that was a knockoff anyways, maybe the Canucks will jump up, and they dropped down 3 spots. So unfortunately, that didn't help very much. But I think once I first started actually podcasting, and it was a thing that started to get me through a lot of shifts at the mill when I was working there. Then I started to study how podcasts became successful a lot, and it was something that I liked looking into and wanted to create my own content. And then I joined another Canucks podcast for a little bit before they kicked me off. And then when started Canucks Convo, I thought it was a pretty good situation, and it was something that nobody else was doing at the time, was interviewing anybody from Twitter, putting out 5-hour episodes and stuff like that. So I think I kind of just fell in love with doing the work around hockey. Like I like waking up at 3 a.m. and to watch Vasily Podkolzin play, or getting to sleep until 9 a.m. to watch Hoglander play and stuff like that. Like I really do love doing the work, and I think now being at BCIT and being over here in Vancouver and having some success with everything, and now the job at Sportsnet, it seems like it was a pretty good move in the end. But yeah, back then, no, I wasn't really worried about writing about the Vancouver Canucks. I was worried about shotgunning Twisted Teas and Hey Y'alls and celebrating Neil's bachelor party, who, yeah, for people that don't know, that wasn't the last bachelor party. So it's kind of like an annual thing for our mutual friend. I think we had the 3rd annual one. The 4th annual one got canceled because of COVID, obviously. But I'm hoping that we can get back there next summer and do the 5th annual Neil Simpson bachelor party. So shout out to him.
I will be there 100%. So I missed the 3rd one and was getting ready for the 4th one this year. But so, David, now that I have you on my show, I'm going to ask why you never answer my Leafs questions in your mailbag.
I'm not answering Leafs questions in a Canucks Army mailbag.
Okay, I figured it would have had something to do with that, but since you're on my show now, I'm going to get you to answer a Leafs question. Okay?
Sure.
How many times do you think the Leafs will lose to the Canucks this year?
Oh man, how many times do they play them? I just did the schedule thing, but I didn't count the number of times they play them. 9. They play them 9 times. 9. Okay, they're gonna lose to them. I think the Canucks are gonna win the season series, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a homer. I genuinely think, just because of how the teams match up and how they played against each other last year, I'm gonna say that it's gonna end 5-4 for the Canucks.
Okay, perfect. So you answered the Leaf question. Chris, I saw you got scooped by Tinder about Hoglander. How did that feel? And also, for the record, could you tell people watching and listening who spoke with Canucks prospect Joni Jarmo first?
Yeah, you did. You definitely set it up for us in the group chat as well. So you beat me to Joni Jarmo, but I got you on about 25 other ones. But
at least.
No, yeah, I think that was a tough scoop to wake up to. I think the funny thing about that Reddit post of where I saw Niels Hoglander on Tinder was that came out at 2 a.m. Somebody posted that on Reddit super late into the night, and I saw it and I just went to bed and I was like, what the hell? What the hell, man? I've been talking to the agent, I've been talking to him. I wanted to be the story that I was able to break, but unfortunately, Tinder never sleeps, I guess, and they beat me to the punch on that one.
Ever did I think when I started this that I would be scouring Instagram stories of people's significant others because they're moving, so they must be getting traded right now. It's pretty crazy. So all jokes aside, you guys have been a really huge help for me in this industry as I've been kind of working my way in. What advice would you have for people wanting to start their own blog or podcast or even write? David, we'll start with you.
I mean, just outwork everybody. It sounds cliche, but it's there's really no excuse for anybody to work harder than you. I know, obviously we get pretty lucky with some of the opportunities that come our way, and there's no denying that. But again, how Chris and I got here was really just working hard. And, even at Canuck Way, when I started, it was an unpaid position. You're just volunteering, so you could do however many you want. So, a lot of people do that and say, okay, I'll just do the bare minimum, which is 2 articles a month there. But I was like, no, I'm going to do 8, and I'm going to be the go-to guy when one of the people in charge, one of the site experts or site editors, whatever you want to call them, couldn't get to something. I was like, I'll do it. I'm doing it for free. So when a position opened up, I was the first one there, and I was like, give me this job. Like, I've proven I can do this. And, I kind of just worked as hard as I could. And I think that's just the main mentality you have to have, is just, it sucks. There's a lot of sacrifice. Like, I've missed some stuff. I've stayed up late every single night for this job, basically, but I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Fantastic. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I think you need to know what your target audience is going to be. You can't just go out there and say, oh, I'm going to just do a hockey podcast. Like, great, there's 4,000 other ones that you're going to have to compete with. Like, if you can actually target something and, work towards being the best at what your target audience is, I think that's a huge thing to be able to do. But it's a lot of what Dave just said too. Not everyone wants to really be, working in sports media as their full-time job. I think a lot of people would love to be able to do that, but for a lot of people, it's just not a possible thing that they can actually go out and accomplish because, life gets in the way, family gets in the way, other things. But I think that Dave and I have both been an opportunity in a situation where we can literally, dedicate 20 hours a day, almost, it feels like some days, to trying to put out hockey content and stuff like that. So I think, depending on what your situation is, if you just want to create a podcast and you want to just, put your words into an online format and speak it out to people that want to listen to your show, don't worry about your listeners. If you're happy putting out your podcast, just be happy with that. And just always try and have fun with it, because if you're not having fun, you're really doing it wrong. Because like, this should be a lot of fun. Even, if you're just starting out and you have 10 people listening, maybe those 10 people are having the time of their lives listening to your show. So just kind of think about it in that way. And just, biggest thing, man, just have fun. I think that's the best thing you can do with it.
I would definitely say that too, is something that you need to do, is make sure you're always having fun when you're doing this. Because I mean, if you're starting to stress out over it should be fun. I mean, we get to chat with amazing people and we get to chat sports. So I want to thank you guys for joining me together, as I've had you both on separate on the show to chat hockey, but really happy that we could set up some time here and then have you both on. So.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. We'll see you next summer for the bachelor party.
Yes, absolutely, we will, and hopefully everything will be good to go, and we'll be able to actually have that bachelor party and stuff. Because I miss Port Renfrew.
Yeah, for people that don't understand, like, I'm repping the island here with my VI.
Yes, shout out to the VI Raiders football team.
Oh yeah, buddy. But for people that haven't experienced Pachitat Bay, I think is how you say it. Down in Port Renfrew, that view, I mean, it's hard to beat a camping spot like that. You got a wide open bay, sunset's right there in front of you. Like, it's absolutely gorgeous. And then, you combine that with 20 to 30 Mike's Hard Lemonades in a day. And you're pretty much set up for success right there.
Yeah. Well, and then too, like I don't know about last time, but before we did it right with they had the budget van, and like the grill setup is, chainsaw too. You guys bring the chainsaw last time?
Yeah, we did. I think, it was a U-Haul truck, like the huge U-Haul truck. And you don't even have to set up a tent. You just, you can fit, like, you get the biggest U-Haul possible. Then you can sleep like 8 to 10 guys in there, and like, it stinks. Yeah, sure. And like, the U-Haul people ask you what the hell you did when you bring the truck back to them. But like, no setup, don't have to worry about sand in your tent. Like, that's a good camping hack right there if you have enough people going.
Well, thank you very much again for joining me. And if you don't follow them already, make sure you follow David and Chris on Twitter, and make sure to check out the Canucks Conversation Podcast and the Canucks Army website for all the latest Canucks news, as we have training camp starting back up again. So have a great day, guys.
You as well.
Thanks, Josh.
All right. So again, I want to thank my two guests, David and Chris, for joining me. That was an absolute blast. Didn't get to even half of the stuff that I wanted to chat about with them. So I'll definitely have to have them on again, because I wanted to find out which one of them is a better baseball player. And I didn't get to ask that question, but I did get to ask Quads a Leafs question, even if it was kind of a tame one. And I got to rip Faber about this Tinder scoop. So that was pretty good. I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. So stay tuned for this Friday, Christmas Day, as we will have our NBA live show to get you caught up for the Christmas Day's action and the couple days of basketball that we've already had in the book. So I hope you guys will tune in for that. So for the Sports Talkline Network, I have been your host, Joshua Griffith, here on the Unnamed Sports Show. And as always, remember to love sports, all sports.